High-resolution, high-refresh monitors like this 180Hz model from Pixio are more accessible than ever, and that must mean that esports are easy now. With access to high-quality panels and high refresh rates and low response times for less than $250, surely anyone can become a pro at competitive games like Warzone, Fortnite and CS2. Even this chump. You would think that, as someone who benchmarks games all day, I'd be, good at them. Well, quite the contrary, old bean. When it comes to competitive games, I am shockingly mid, and cooperative titles are quite out of my wheelhouse. I could blame a number of factors, like insufficient practice or my advancing years, but the truth is I'm just not that interested in getting good. I only want to get kills in-game to make my benchmarking videos more exciting. Yes, okay, that does sound an awful lot like a cope. However, when I'm playing these games for my benchmarking videos, I am mostly playing at 60Hz. This is a limitation of my external capture setup. I have a perfectly capable PC, and an older but still pretty decent 144Hz display, but when I'm benchmarking, the pass-through signal is limited to 60Hz at 1440p. However many frames my GPU's rendering and how many my monitor's theoretically capable of displaying every second, only 60 of them actually make it. Which begs the question, with access to a high refresh panel and no capture card slowing things down, can a noob like me get good? Can I earn my first W in Warzone? Can I get a chicken dinner in Fortnite? No wait, never mind. That's where Pixio comes in. The PX277 Prime Neo, which was kindly provided by Pixio, is a high-spec 27-inch gaming monitor with a 2560x1440 IPS panel, 180Hz refresh rate, and 1 millisecond grey-to-grey response time, priced at just $229. It supports adaptive sync all the way up to the max refresh rate, unlike my older monitor which capped out at 90Hz, and has a 400 nit peak brightness. As with the last Pixio I tested, it supports HDR, yes, but I'm informed that while the monitor isn't certified at the time of writing, it is currently going through the process, and may well be an official HDR 400 certified display by the time you watch this. Factor in the wide colour gamut and viewing angles, versatile stand with height, tilts, swivel and pivot, and this looks on paper like a good all-round solution for someone like myself who uses their PC as much for content creation as gaming. I'll talk a little more about my experience with the PX277 Prime Neo later in the video. In the meantime, my goal is to play 3 of the games from my benchmarking suite which I find the most challenging and, frankly, intimidating to play, until I win at least one match. Or, let's be realistic, until I get bored and give up. 180Hz is only a relatively small step up from the 144 that's been common in monitors for a couple of years now, but it does push the system requirements up by quite a bit. Lighter weight titles like CS2 can hit 180 FPS plus pretty easily, but you need both a good GPU and CPU to hit those frames consistently in more demanding games like Warzone. To that end, I've borrowed my moderately priced GPU test rig running a Ryzen 5 7500F and 32 gigs of DDR5 6000 and paired it with an RX 6900 XT I usually use for testing CPUs. Combined, this makes for a pretty decent representation of a sub-$1,000 gaming rig that would be a great pairing with a lower cost monitor like this one, and should have absolutely no issues running these multiplayer titles at 200 plus FPS. However, to avoid the capture box limiting things, I'm recording internally using AMD Relive, or is it Relive? Whatever. It's the only solution I have that can record gameplay while still allowing the full 180Hz refresh rate. But it does use a tiny bit of GPU power in the process, so while I will have an FPS overlay in the corner of the screen, this isn't intended as a benchmarking video. If that's what you're looking for, the reviews of the CPU and GPU will be linked in the description. I eased myself into this challenge with Fortnite. I've been playing this one since the start of my first channel back in 2019, and I've already gone through my dark night of the soul moment and emerged as someone fairly confident of at least bagging a few bot kills in 0 build. I started off in performance mode and found it to be a pretty spiky time. The frame rate was not at all smooth, and I'd have been better off locking at the refresh rate. On the positive side, I actually won my very first game of the challenge. So, I guess that proves it. Nothing more to be said. 180Hz is great and will definitely turn you into a pro gamer. Thanks for watching. Kindly do the usual YouTube things if you feel so inclined, and that would be an anticlimax, wouldn't it? I don't know the internal workings of the Fortnite servers, but I definitely got the feeling that I was having my hand held through this match. Either I was up against some extremely low-grade bots, or my lobby was populated exclusively by people who've never played Fortnite before. As the challenge wore on, the matchmaking stopped giving me a reach around and started to feel a touch more competitive. And, of course, this meant my patented strategy of just stand there and shoot became less effective. On a performance note, I did find switching to DX12 and the medium quality preset with 100% res scaling gave about the right balance of performance and graphical quality. However, I didn't find my mojo again for the entire remainder of the challenge. I fell foul of the water-bending scroll on more than one occasion, and yet when I tried it for myself, I got my ass handed to me. My one early easy win was my only one of the challenge, and I had to be satisfied with that. I filmed this over-the-shoulder footage a few days later, and I clearly suffered from a bit of performance anxiety, and only finished in 70th place. When it comes to my being at least reasonably confident about my abilities, Fortnite is an exception to the rule. Normally in games like PUBG and Apex Legends, I either fixate on prepping for 10-15 minutes before getting sniped from half a map away, or I go in all overexcited with guns blazing and get utterly humiliated. And these things are all mostly true of my time in Call of Duty Warzone. I've been slowly improving over the years, learning to use kill streaks and loadouts, picking up weapons blueprints from my monthly Amazon Prime gaming giveaways, and so forth. However, I still rarely play unless it's for a video, and I've still yet to win a match since, I don't know, possibly the first season? Maybe I'm forgetting one, but it's definitely been long enough that I don't even know what the exfil cinematic looks like anymore. I'm pleased to say I actually got more than a few kills in my time playing Warzone for this challenge. I hit a couple of snipes I wouldn't usually expect to land. I successfully stayed on target with various ARs, SMGs and LMGs, and I only recall losing one gulag duel. Maybe I'm oversimplifying things by attributing all this to a high refresh rate, but I definitely felt more in control than I do at lower hertz, and even when I died, I felt like I'd put up more of a fight than I usually do. Though, I'd still argue this game's far too visually messy for a competitive shooter. I generally like games that don't put realism ahead of readability. Still, I managed to whole-ass my way through about a dozen games, though I don't think I was ever in danger of winning any of them. I did manage a third place finish at one point, but mainly because I spent most of the game running across the map without finding anyone. When it came to filming this footage, I got a bit camera shy again and ended up in 27th place. I don't consider myself terrible at Counter-Strike 2. I've actually won a couple of death matches before now. However, I chose it for this video because I wanted to compare the full-fledged 180Hz experience to 60Hz in a way I could sort of measure. It's not perfect, I know, but the plan was to run 3 matches at 180Hz and 3 at 60 and then count the kills. I started at the higher refresh rate and again, 180Hz feels incredible to play, but that doesn't necessarily translate into skill. That being said, I finished my first match in first place with 62 kills. Not too shabby. I followed that up with a second place finish with 59 kills and dropped off a little in the third match with just 53 kills, landing me in third place. At this point I was concerned I was getting worse because of boredom or lethargy, so I took an hour's break and came back with the refresh rate dropped to 60Hz. I don't think I was expecting to feel the difference like this, but honestly, the drop-off was massive. It felt like 30 FPS. My warm-up game was a disaster, and my first full match ended with just 46 kills. I couldn't confirm my leaderboard position as people had quit before I could make a note of it. I thought I'd maybe acclimate to the lower refresh rate over time, but I actually got even worse. The second full game ended with 41 kills and about an 8th position on the leaderboard. The final game was a calamity with a 9th place finish from only 32 kills. I know that might not seem bad for a self-confessed noob, but a couple of hours earlier I'd hit almost double that. Now, obviously this doesn't mean much on its own. There's tons of variables, not least of which is the calibre of the lobbies I was being put in, but I can tell you that going back to 60Hz from 180 was frustrating. I felt like C-3PO trying to hit headshots at a lower refresh rate, and I truly believe it was holding me back. A fast display like this one can be life or death for players of competitive games like these, but for more sedate games, it's less of a big deal. Not that you can't tell the difference in titles like Forza Horizon 5, just that blaming a 60Hz panel for your poor driving is a less believable excuse. It is still extremely nice to have though. The feeling of smoothness and responsiveness from a high refresh panel is kind of addictive, and going back to 60 or 75 afterwards is really quite disappointing. It's like coming back off vacation to find the gutters clogged and the pipes are leaking. Of course, if the 180Hz refresh rate alone isn't enough to sway you in favour of this particular monitor, maybe the HDR function will be. It's definitely the best HDR monitor I've tested of the 2 so far, and the first one didn't really count. I could certainly see what the intended effect of HDR was in Forza, though as the Prime Neo is limited to 400 nits, I did find the effect was far better when playing in a darkened room. As you can see from the test footage, even with my studio lighting dimmed a little, the HDR effect is not that impactful in a bright environment. Again, I'm afraid I have to say that this monitor's HDR function is probably not going to appeal to connoisseurs. It has piqued my interest on the subject, however, and now I'm really looking forward to finding a quintessential good HDR display in the future. While I'm running through my opinions on the Prime Neo, I do have a couple more criticisms I need to make. The stand, while fantastic for a monitor at this price point, and definitely a cut above the competition, is a little shorter than I'm used to. I found I needed to either tilt the screen up or drop my seat in order to level with it, so depending on your desk setup, you may find you need to prop it up or maybe even replace the stand altogether. Thankfully, it has a 75mm square VESA mount if you want to take that option, but that does then make this cost significantly more than the $230 retail price. Also, I don't consider myself a bezel snob, but I think the design here is a little deceptive. The actual display area starts a few millimeters inside the bezel, so while it looks like an ultra-sleek, near bezel-less frame when powered off, when it's actually displaying something, it starts to look like basically any other monitor. Finally, a minor gripe. The port selection is slightly above the bare minimum, and I don't think many budget-conscious gamers will be too disappointed by it, but I'd still like to have seen some form of USB hub. With all that said, I think I have an actual conclusion here, and it's not just the normal wishy-washy fence-sitting answer of, it depends. If you want to play competitively in online games and you don't have a high refresh monitor, you really should get one, even if it is just to remove an excuse for why you still can't win at Warzone. Like, yes, you can play at lower refresh rates, there's nothing stopping you from trying, and if you're naturally good at these games, then you'll probably still be good on a slower panel, but while 180Hz won't automatically turn you into a pro, removing the refresh rate bottleneck will get you as close to being one as you're ever likely to get. Thankfully, picking up a decent quality display with 144, 165 or even 180Hz doesn't have to be a major purchase decision anymore. And if you're interested in giving this one a try, there's a link to it in the description. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna start researching new capture cards. Thanks for watching, kindly do the usual YouTube things if you feel so inclined, and I'll see you next time.